Hi, this is part 3 of the sculpting section of the gigantic tutorial for Curvy 3D. This time we'll be detailing the face and sculpting teeth. The brown version is what we're aiming at, and the grey is what we'll be working on. So to sculpt teeth, I'm going to start with a simple placeholder. I'm going to reduce the opacity so I can see through to my reference a bit, and I'm going to draw a simple lathe to represent the teeth as a placeholder so I can get my my lips in the right position. So I've drawn one curve with a little kink in the middle for where the teeth meet. Then I'm going to use auto lathe to make a second copy of that curve and drag it out to determine the size of the teeth. The further back I drag it, the wider the teeth get as well in the mouth. Now this character's got a fairly small mouth. I'll just change the diffuse colour of the teeth section so it stands out from the rest of the head. I can tweak the size of that lathe a little bit more, make the teeth wider or narrower. It's much easier to get these proportions right with a simple placeholder than it is when we actually start sculpting the teeth individually. Okay, now I'm happy with that. I'm going to start on the cutting out the area for the lips. So I can use the sub tool to dig a hole around where the teeth are. Now this hole, it doesn't have to go right back as far as a normal mouth would, it just needs to tuck behind the teeth. And then by using the right mouse button I can turn the sub tool into an add tool and pull out sections of the lips. If I had the add tool selected, the right mouse button would do the sub. Again, we're just trying to get things roughly right, and we can tweak them and polish them later on. Using the mirror, the butterfly icon, see what it looks on the other side, see where I need to edit it and replace it. There I'm using the soft move tool with the shift key to move in and out of the screen. Mirror it again. Just sculpting around, seeing where I need to fix the model, tweaking it. Now I'm going to cut in some details with the sub tool and using a pinch. So like before, the more times you go over a line with pinch, the tighter the crease becomes. In this case I'm using the fold pinch setting, which you can get to just under the pinch slider. Changes the shape of the pinched area to more of a corner than a spike. And using different sized brushes I can draw in some finer details to give this a bit more character. Just cutting in around the eyes and cheek. So if the surface is too uniform and smooth, it just looks too simplistic, but a few creases and dimples can make it look more realistic. Not that I'm aiming for realism in any of my work, really. I'm aiming more for a stylized realism. So there I've drawn a line with sub, and now I'm using pinch to add some definition. A lot of the emotion comes from these bunched up wrinkles and lines. As always, it helps to have a reference image open on the side so you can compare. So here I'm using fade out and redraw stroke. So I draw a stroke and then press I to redraw it, and it fades out. You can fade in and fade out, or change any of the sliders, or even change the brush type when you redraw, just to tweak a single stroke into different looks. There I'm using fade in and fade out to add those little dimples and creases on its nose. You'll find quite low values for strength and pinch work the best. If you use the high values, it can just throw your model out very quickly. Whereas a very low intensity can still make quite a visible effect, because the highlights will pick up off it. And you'll notice that the wrinkles and dents, even from quite low intensity marks. Just copying some brow details for my reference. And depending on how you texture your model, it might end up hiding a lot of these details, and also how it's lit. If the lighting is quite flat, the smaller wrinkles and dents will vanish. So sometimes it's good to push these a bit further than they would be normally, so they'll show up later. So all of this is done on an adaptive subdivision mesh. You notice in the groups panel, the selected item has a diamond shape for its icon, and the diamond shape means it's an adaptive subdivision. So when you draw, you'll be adding extra triangles. Just mirror that, see how it looks. Before we move on to the teeth. So again, the brown one is going to be my template for what I'm aiming at. And we're going to replace our placeholder with some real teeth. So to start off with, I'm making some gums. So I'm drawing a U shape, smoothing it with a simple curve ruler, using the Auto Lathe 2 to make it into two curves, so I can move the other one. This is similar to how we made the original placeholder. We drag it out to change the size of it. Copy and paste, or Control D to duplicate, and rotate that down so we have a lower gum. This will help us line up the teeth and give them a nice sort of rounded appearance, because they sit on quite a round curve. Now I'm going to draw the first tooth with a lathe. And this will show that lathes don't have to be sort of rounded. They can have quite sharp ends too. If you space out the ends of the curves, they'll give you sort of a flatter end, which is what we want for this tooth. And just move that into position on the gum. Again, you're holding shift while you've got the move tool to push something in and out of the screen. It means you don't have to switch to another view to move it. Again, Control D to duplicate and rotate the next tooth into position. just subtly changing the shapes as I go around. Again, definitely useful to have some reference, even if it's just a quick photo you've snapped of yourself. I wouldn't have a clue how to lay out teeth or their different shapes if I didn't have some reference images to look at. Basically, you've got a big flat one, a small flat one, and then a pointy one. You can tell my knowledge of anatomy is limited. I just sculpt for fun, really. Okay, one more flat one, and the teeth deeper into the head are not going to be visible, so I'm not going to model them. Then select all of those. You can hold down Shift and drag over the items in the Groups panel to select lots of them. Control G to group. Control D to duplicate. And I'm going to rotate these guys. If I mirror, it'll mirror around the center point of the grid, which is, it's not what I wanted. It would send the copy of the teeth right down to the bottom of the scene. So instead, I'm going to duplicate and I'm going to rotate on the spot. I want it to be precisely 180 degrees, so I'll turn on snap rotation. No, in this case I won't turn on snap rotation, I'll just do it by eye. And dull down the point on that one. You do actually have a pointed teeth on the bottom row, but I'm not going to worry about that because it's fairly hidden. The teeth are starting to shape up. I'm going to give this guy a bit of an overbite and make sure his incisors are sticking out, so make him look a little bit more ferocious. If I get stuck, if I have lots of groups and I've not named them, an easy way to see which item it actually is just to hide it, pressing the little eye, and you'll see it flashing on and off on the screen, so you can tell which one's which. But it's best to name them. Then I chuck them all in a group and rename that as teeth. And that's all about we have time for this time. In the next video, I'll be turning this giant head into a more demonic form with horns and ears and more sculpted details. So tune in to part 4 of the sculpting series for that.